Welcome everyone back to the Perimenopausal Athletes and Beyond Masterclass series. We are hearing from experts from a huge range: female physiology, nutrition, training, recovery, so we can be in our best health and perform in life and in sport. And today I am thrilled to be joined by Helene, Guillaume. How do I spit?
Perfect.
Was I right?
Guillaume. Yeah.
She is the founder and creator of Wild.Ai, and this is a fascinating. It's an app. I'm going to actually say state of the art because it is. It's like such a forward-thinking app for women in tracking their menstrual cycle or their symptoms, and we're going to hear all about it and understand. So let me first tell you a little bit more about her. She's studied mathematics and financial risks and was a quant in a hedge fund and management consultant to Fortune 500 companies in AI. She was a rugby player, is an ultra marathon runner, a triathlete, a surfer, a skier, and an ice swimmer. Ice swimming, that is so beyond my ability of thinking. Anyways, her favorite combined skill set is vitality plus brains. Super fun. Mostly like what we're going to be talking about today is what she and her team is doing, and that is really helping women to understand their bodies. And what she brings forward is this idea of like, we've got fitness trackers and blood tests and pap smears, and we've got all this data, but we're not capturing it. We're not empowering ourselves with it. And she points out in an article, like, we understand more about our cars than we do about our own bodies. And she wants to change that. And so welcome. Thank you for being here and sharing your story, because that's what we're going to hear about, and just your knowledge and what you want for us. So yeah, welcome.
Thank you. So excited, and what you're doing is so needed. So I'm very excited to be here. So yeah, the reason we started Wild.Ai is basically coming from this background of data science and seeing all this data that we were using in finance, but then like as an athlete, having all this data from my wearables and as a woman, just doing, like as you said, like blood tests, smear tests, and all being scattered around. And I was training, eating like a man, whereas I have a different body. But at that time, our bodies were very much considered as men. And so I started to be really interested in that. And then started building Wild.Ai, and joined with like Dr. Stacey Sims, who did all her research on the topic. That she loves saying women are not small men. And yeah, 80% of the medical research is still done on male mice, and it's even worse when it comes to sports. 3% of budgets go to women, and specifically on what is happening to the female body. And when you look at our bodies, we are very different. And now I've been talking about it for a while, but at the beginning, like people were like, yeah, of course. And I was like, okay, so give me some examples. And people couldn't really make some examples. So like what we've done is extensive research on what is women. And we translate that research into our app, helping women train, eat, and recover based on the menstrual cycle or based on the symptoms if they do not menstruate for various reasons, taking contraceptive, perimenopause, menopause, the different conditions that they may be in, because we have these massive life stages that we go through as women.
Yeah, no, it is truly amazing that we came from we start very, very much in still a place where the science is just not available, right? And then on top of that, we are just starting to realize and starting to educate even our young women how important it is to start to get to know their bodies. And so thank you. Yeah, I totally get that. It is, we've got to start digging in and take ownership of our information and get it. So one thing that I want you to explain, because you know the ins and outs of tracking obviously so well, is that we talk about, okay, we know our first day of our period. Fantastic. I normally have a cycle of, the fallacy, 28 days. Every woman has 28 days. Totally not true. But in any case, we know that there's that. And then we know there's ovulation. But can you share a little bit more about what can be tracked and why it's important for women to become engaged and involved in their cycle, like their cycle data, and specifically for athletes, and what we should pay attention to?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, like we have big life stages. So as a young girl, when we are 14 or 10, or whenever we have a bleeding for the first time, like you go to school and you ask like the other kids to run around the block, but like you're bleeding and it hurts, and what you hear is actually you're moody, bitchy, and it does not exist. And throughout our life, that's basically very much the journey we go through. We take a pill to like fight acne, another pill, and basically it makes us bloated, and like we have pains and symptoms, but what we hear is like it's actually not true, or it doesn't matter. And we have all these conditions like endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome. Then we try to get pregnant, post-pregnancy, 10 years of perimenopause, where you yet again like a teenager going through all these hormonal changes, and then menopause. But then when you are for the 40 years block, where you actually do have a menstrual cycle, you have these body variations all the time. And menstrual cycle is not only the bleeding part, which is the periods, but it's actually 100% of the time we are in this cycle, which again, we've heard as a messaging that, oh, you're moody and bitchy and it's annoying and you have pains. And it's like, it's basically like what the messaging I heard when I was growing up is like, oh, it's actually basically horrible to be a woman. It's like so annoying, and being a man is like, is incredible. So I heard that, and it was a pretty negative messaging that I had basically. And so trying to understand first of all, like is that true? Like is that really a bug to be a woman, or is it actually a feature we just did not really understand that body? And what turns out is that it's probably actually just we didn't understand really that body. So to give you some examples, when we have our periods, we might need iron. When we ovulate, we need increased fats. After ovulation, we need to time our protein intake very well. If we don't respect that, the body is in deficiencies. And so it's basically fighting against something, because it needs nutrients, or it needs certain type of training, and we're not serving the body properly. Or before your periods, the time where a lot of women would say, oh, I feel like irritable and I'm like mood swings, etc. You can take supplements to fight against that. And you can turn that into a positive. Like, since when having emotions is a negative thing? It's a beautiful thing that women have like every single month. So how can we turn it into a positive story? It's a moment where you're like very creative and you're very in tune with yourself, so you can be like more empathetic. And again, that's not and shouldn't be a negative thing. So these are like the things that you have throughout your life. And so the things that we're tracking from two sources. One is from wearables, and the other one is from manual input. So what we track from your wearables is your activities, your sleep patterns, your resting heart rate, to understand where you stand and your progression, and it's objective data from wearables. And then in addition to that, through manual inputs, how you feel, your eagerness to train, your stress level, any pains, where are these pains located. And then what we're doing in the app is we start seeing patterns, and cycle after cycle, you start understanding your body better, and understanding what you can do to alleviate the symptoms. That is if you have a menstrual cycle. If you do not have a menstrual cycle, if you're in perimenopause, like this time, this 10 years period time where you start having irregular cycles, mood swings, possibly as well, like brain fogs, and like and heat waves, etc. Those are symptoms that every single woman on the planet is going to have. So it's like, it sounds incredible that the only reply today is like, well, just open the window. Surely there's something else that works for a profile of woman that is similar to yours. Women also like start struggling to like they start like getting more belly fat, start losing weight less efficiently. So they really are in the moment of their life where they're questioning it a lot, and they've been working with their menstrual cycle for 40 years, and suddenly it doesn't react as well as it used to. So they're really questioning that. So so you can track all these symptoms, and then what we are doing is we provide you recommendations based on assumptions or research that we've done, and then if it works for you, we learn, and then we'll benefit from it with the other women as well. And that's what we're doing continuously.
So that's fascinating. So you brought into the discussion what the point here, that you are looking at perimenopausal women as well, and that's one of the challenges. So because the cycle, it starts becoming irregular. So can you dig into that just a little bit more for us? So do you see patterns? Like, I know this is in more in beta mode. Am I correct in understanding that's in the beta mode? So are you looking right now to start to just dig in? Okay, what does the research say? And how do we start to understand, or are there any patterns? Because there is no science, there's no research being really done on a mass scale. Is that correct? At this point in time, on a mass scale, to understand the cycle or the variations that women generally experience. Can you dig into that, or just share with that what is known in general? Or
yeah, so we've done research behind. So there is some research, but as you said, like it's not at a scale interesting enough, like to have proper recommendations yet. So what we're doing now is we have some research and we're putting it in the app, and it's in beta, but it's actually accessible. So women in perimenopause and menopause can use the app already. And so based on the research, we provide the first pool of recommendations, and then we will learn. So what is really interesting here is that you get to learn things about your own body straight away when you are joining the app, and you're tracking things that you might have had but you were unaware of. And so suddenly it makes you aware of certain symptoms, and it makes you aware of, like, you may not have a cyclical patterns coming back when you're in perimenopause, because it's it becomes to be a little bit all over the place. And as you already mentioned, even when you are having a menstrual cycle, it's not necessarily 28 days, like the health is like between like 20, 22 to 35 days.
Yeah.
And it's totally normal to have like fluctuations. But then when you start having perimenopause, when you're in perimenopause, you may start having certain symptoms. But the nice thing is that you actually can really act on those by, first of all, identifying them. Second, recognizing them as well, because, like, again, as women, we've always heard like it does not exist, and if it does, you just mood in bitchy, so ignore it as much as you can. So like even like just feeling it in your body, it's hard, because we heard like it's all called like menstrual pain or like being bitchy. And so like, yeah, recognizes like it's real things happening. And then throughout like this journey with us as well is like learning about.
okay, I just lost a little bit of the audio there, but you ended up on, you were just learning about that we're learning about ourselves. One thing that I think that it's important for women to know is that we might actually be starting to enter into perimenopause and still have a regular cycle. And so it's not that we are actually like, the irregularity of our cycle is just one sign, and that there are others as well. And so I love it that you really are pointing out, like, it's not just about tracking the first day and, maybe you're ovulating, maybe you're not. But it is all the things that are happening within our cycle. Yeah.
Really, and it's really interesting. So also, like, there's vocabulary again here. So first of all, when I say menstrual cycle, a lot of people, including women, often think that it's the periods only. And when we say menopause, a lot of women and people would think that it's when you start having these variations of the cycle. And the obvious, most visible part is the bleeding, but there's a lot of things. It goes through like decreasing the fertility level, the decrease of the fertility level, vaginal and bladder issues, like the hot flushes, which is like the most like a popular one, but the mood swings and the brain fogs. You also start having your bone density going down. So it's really important to focus on certain type of exercises that would strengthen your bone density, and look at that. Cholesterol levels change, sexual functions change as well. So you have a lot of things that is happening throughout these like period that can last 10 years. And so it's like it can start like at 35, or it's like quite common around like 40, 42, and then it can end in 52. And you are then called menopaused once it's like a 12 months anniversary of not having a bleed. And then 12 months after that, again, you were like postmenopausal, but it's interesting, like 12 months after you can have bleed again. But typically, like once you had no bleeding for 12 months, you basically called in menopause.
Yeah.
And so before that it's all over the place. And so yeah, a lot of, again, like vocabulary wise, like the perimenopausal word often is like not in our vocabulary.
No, and we associate the, like in the traditional literature, it's like menopause was all about, oh, like way older women out there. It wasn't, we're not in menopause. We don't need to be thinking about this. And this is definitely part of the series that we're trying to shift that sort of like, no, this is actually for you now to start thinking about. So can you just clarify a little bit? So your app actually like helps you as an individual as it gets to know you, your cycle, your symptoms, your you. It tells you what you need a little bit differently. Is that what I'm getting? Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
isn't
exactly.
it?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing because like every single woman is different, and also like your condition is changing. So you might be taking the pill and not willing to have a child, and then you might just want to stop the pill, but you don't want to have a child, and then you may want to have a child, and then you are entering perimenopause, and then you have regular cycles, and then it's irregular again, and so your condition as a woman is changing all the time. So you need to be able to, we need to be able to serve these women all the time. So we've done a lot of research on that. There are still some areas that we do not cover yet in our research, such as women in pregnancy and postpartum. But these are like the next big block. And then women with specific medical conditions. So if you have endometriosis or polycystic ovary syndrome, which 10% of women have, we do not we're not a medical app for now. So again, like you can track a lot of things, and we can help you self-diagnose, because some of the things are actually fairly common symptoms, but we're not a medical app. So and we aim to be able to serve these women as well.
Huh. Fascinating. Can you tell us a little bit about the post, like, and the and beyond part, and why it would be interesting for us to track when you have no cycle anymore and things are actually like, this is a beautiful time of life when you get past that one day anniversary called menopause, and then you get into the day +1 and you're in postmenopause. And what is it that women want to know about their cycle then?
Yeah, so then you do not have a cycle anymore.
Right.
You still have hormones, by the way.
Yeah.
And you still have hormonal changes, but it's not cyclical. The thing that is common for women before menopause is that they typically have a cyclical variation of their hormones, which may or may not be regular. Very often it's just not regular. But once you pass that, you still have symptoms, you still have things that are very common to other women who have your profile. So depending on where you grew up, your ethnicity and your age and your history as well. If you had a child or if you did not have a child, it does impact your physical body. And if you were taking different type of contraceptives for 40 years, it does impact your body as well. If you had a vasectomy, like a lot of surgeries that are very common as well for women do impact your health as well. So all these things basically is your history of female health, which is really interesting. Like I was talking to a friend of mine who has a wellness center, and they do this like extremely holistic approach of health. I'm like, what's the history of women that you ask? You know, like, I mean, I understand you ask like a lot of things on health in general, but you ask anything specific for women, and they're like, no. So if you had like a surgery in any of your bones, they would ask that and they would track it. If you had like any, like if you take contraceptives or you had a child, you don't ask. Whereas obviously it does impact your body. Yeah. Like you have a reset of hormones once you have like the baby's out. Like, I mean, like how can they not track that, and how can they not take that into consideration? So yeah, as a woman who's like this 1 year anniversary of menopause, you still have a lot of things, like your bone density is going down. So it's really important to be able to understand your bone density, which you can go to doctor and have an analysis. But then you can physically do exercises. So like things that are associated to men often, like so weightlifting and things like that, are actually really, really important for women in general, but especially in perimenopause and menopause, because it builds up your bone density, for instance. So yeah.
Yeah, well, this is what's so great about the series is that women are definitely get the message to, get into the weight room to start lifting and understand what strength training means and how to do it. And so that's, I mean, it's absolutely wonderful. Um, I'm wondering, so so now we have the app and you're putting in, you have the availability to put in other data. And so basically you now can go to your family practitioner in this one place. And is that the idea of like the storage of you are empowered to go to your doctor with this and then provide them as like, yeah, here's my first day of my period, but did you know, by the way, and have that as well. So I guess that's what's so important about it too. Hey.
So we're non-medical.
Oh, I know.
We do
Yeah.
not we do not track things like, or we do not integrate with things like your blood test or your smear test.
No.
One day I'd love to.
No.
But yeah, you can definitely. And actually, like when I go to doctor, like often, my gynecologist, they often like would ask like, when was the last periods? On now they do ask. They use not to ask. So you can definitely use the app for that. And also like bringing up like your patterns and your symptoms is really interesting, because then you just have facts.
Yeah.
And then you can show them and say like, what do you recommend on that? And I mean, like the medical world is obviously like incredibly powerful. So you can tap into their knowledge, but by having your own data. And there's a book called by Eric Topol called The Patient Will See You, which I find incredible, which is, it says this history of used to have this like person dressed in white who was like basically the holder of all decisions, deciding which blood test you can do, reading the blood test and telling you. A doctor has the right to tell you, for instance, you have cancer or not tell you. He's the only decision maker basically. And there's a flip to the patient holding data sets. So by having a wearable, so I'm using like a Oura Ring, a Whoop band, a Garmin, I start having patterns and data sets and Wild.Ai, my app, and I start seeing things, and it's very obvious, like it's pure data sets. So I can first of all analyze that. Then you have, that's the pure data, like raw data sets, and then you have a layer of learning, which we provide as well as an app, like what could be those symptoms. For instance, like detecting endometriosis based on the type of pain you have and things like that. We don't do it right now, but we could like highlight it, and then you can go see your doctor and say like, I would like to do this type of analysis because this is my assumption, and they don't really like that. But it's definitely like a world where like it's called the precision medicine, a world that is fascinating, and then I'd love to like tap into like at some point, and I'm using the app that way already.
Yeah, I think there's something really powerful to say that first of all, that the patient, us, we are in the position of being able to say so much more. I think one of the hardest things is to know the questions to ask. So, when you go to a physician or, OB/GYN or something, to know how to, navigate that. And so there are experts that we're bringing onto this series that are actually, experts in, these are the questions that you can ask, because you're trying to bring that forward. But what's exciting about what your app would do is that you now are tracking, you're actually, because I'm not very good at journaling. So then, but you can put it in somewhere so we can have it. So combined, this is what we have to do as women, is that we're taking and we're combining and we're understanding in a much more holistic way, which is super cool. All right. Is there anything else that you want us to know about the app itself that really, other than all the things that you've just said, that is just like, you've got to know this to the women that we're speaking to?
Yeah, I think like what I mean, like what I'm super excited about is like, yes, it's an app, it's a tech app on your phone.
Yeah.
But really the other thing that we are working on is like this messaging behind, which is like, the reason why I created that as well is like I grew up like thinking it wasn't cool to be a girl and it wasn't cool to be a woman, because I had like this body that I heard was like moody and bitchy, and I was like, well, that's not very fun.
No.
Whereas like the boys, they were like super cool and had an amazing body and they could do whatever they wanted. And so I think like another big part of our job is changing this messaging for women themselves as the perception, and second to the world as well. So I think like we need women to understand that, and so we're really working on that. Like, how can you have this messaging, like it is actually beautiful to have a menstrual cycle, and how, and like, and perimenopause and menopause, like for a lot of women is like the death of the woman. And like, I mean, everywhere you see in advertising, you see like a beautiful young, a sexy girl with an old guy, and you never see the other way around. It's like, since one is like a woman who is like a woman who's 50 is full blooming, and like, like, so how can we change this perception that women have as well on themselves? Like being in perimenopause is not a bad thing. It's like 10 years, it can be 10 years, it's huge. I'm gonna like put that out, and like a woman in menopause, like not, and so it's not like the end of the world. It's like it's probably a beginning. So how can we also like change with this perception and change the messaging? So that's a huge part of our work as well, which we're really excited about, because I think also like now, I mean, like I've been working on this company for 4 years, but like now probably like the last year, I would say, it seems like a lot of people are waking up to the fact that we need to change the messaging, but there's still a lot of things to do. So yeah, anyone who's like around that, like, writers, like we have like some press, but we really want to get this messaging out and have the support of women and men, because it's not for women we're doing it for, it's for everyone.
Yeah, I think that is such a good point, and it actually leads me to the next part, because I am part of the beta group of doing for coaches. And so one of the things that coaches also have access to, and will have more access to as you continue to roll it out, is the coach app. And so I have a list of my athletes, and I know where they are in their cycle or what they're going through, and it's so super cool. And it's just like, oh, and I'm also able to, as a coach, to be able to start putting together. So cool on that. Another point for Wild.Ai. All right. I have a couple of questions. I'm asking everybody these questions. Are you ready? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's my rapid fire series. And number one, give us one moment of courage.
So one analogy I love is, I'm surfing a lot now, is surfing and like entrepreneurship, because you basically like, you in the water and you paddle, and you have like this idea of this bliss of moment, and you're getting like hit, basically like you're getting like washed out, and but then you try again, and you fail and you fail and you fail, and but you have like this idea of this moment of bliss. And I think like entrepreneurship is really similar. Is like, you have, when you're employed, like the worst fear you have is like getting fired. When you're entrepreneurs, like basically you get slapped in the face like all the time. So I think like resilience, like courage and resilience, I would really associate these two words, is like going through over and over and again and learning from it and building stronger. And it's more like a general feeling of courage, but it's, and building up like, and the reward is amazing, like having the members who love it, and people who choose to have their career with us, like working with us, or investors, etc. But yeah, I learned a lot through resilience, through sports, and through entrepreneurship, and like the interlink.
That's so cool. Yeah, no, that resonates. All right, tell us one thing that you're grateful for right now.
Well, I think like close linked is like, is the it's like people who choose, like, like building something from like my, I don't know, internal organs, and like basically like seeing people like loving it and having an impact is like, it's amazing.
It is cool. I love it. I'm building it from your internal organs, like literally in your case. That's amazing. Building it from your uterus. Okay. What is one piece of advice you would have for yourself? Yeah. Like you're just going to keep telling yourself again and again and again.
Yeah, I think that this one is, I really like that question. I think it's that, I'm in a journey of like discovering what it is like to be a woman, and recognizing that it's beautiful. And it's learning that, I think, is an ongoing journey, because I'm seeing my mother and I'm like, oh my God, she's incredible. And my grandmother, she's incredible as well. So like over and over again, it's like changing the status quo and not settling for my insecurities. And so yeah, I have insecurities, and then I try to turn them into like this strong messaging and my purpose. So continue on that.
I love it. I love it. All right. And people can find you at?
So the website is Wild.Ai, WILD.ai, on the 2 app stores, Wild.Ai, and then on Instagram, Wild_AI_coach. And yeah, send us messages if you have any questions. We're super excited. Or email Helene, Helene, at the end, at Wild.Ai.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, take care and yeah, keep on your mission. It's a beautiful one. So thank you for doing all the work you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.